Bobby Lee here with Chiller Bait Tanks. Today, let's talk about salt. I get tons of questions about salt. What it does, what kind to use, why do I have to salt my bait tank, how much. So let's talk about salt and why we have to salt our bait tanks. We'll address a few myths that are going around out there too about what salt does. So first, you have to understand how fish regulate their osmotic pressure. Now, I promise I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of technical terms. We'll simplify this. Saltwater fish have the luxury to be kept in what's known as an open system. We can just pump water through them constantly, and that's due to how they regulate their osmotic pressure. So a saltwater fish is in a constant battle to remove salt from their body and retain the water. So they're constantly uptaking water, removing the salt, retaining the water. Now, a freshwater fish, specifically a freshwater bait fish, has the opposite problem. They are in a constant battle to keep water out of their body while retaining salt in their cells. Okay, and due to the stress of catching a bait fish, they lose a large amount of salt. And if we didn't salt our bait tanks to 4 to 8 parts per thousand salinity, they would die of osmotic shock because they can't uptake enough salt from fresh water quick enough to prevent osmotic shock, to regulate their osmotic pressure. So essentially, water would penetrate their body and they would die. And so that's why we salt our freshwater fish. Now, all freshwater fish aren't created equal when it comes to regulating their osmotic pressure, which adds to the confusion. You know, I put my bluegill in my bait tank, or I put my bluegill in my live well, and I run the tank like I always do in an open system, not a closed system, and I don't add salt to them and they don't die. Well, not all fish are created equal when it comes to regulating their osmotic pressure. Some fish are better at retaining that salt, and it's that simple. Forage fish typically, if you want to separate them, forage fish with softer bodies have this problem. And this is why we keep them in a closed system, control the salinity, controlled water changes, to just give them a shot of Gatorade, if you will. Help them retain that salt and prevent them from dying of osmotic shock. So what kind of salt to use? It's simple. 100% pure salt. This means evaporated seawater without additives. We don't want anti-clumping agents. We don't want iron out additives. We just want pure salt. The anti-clumping agent's a big one. It's sprayed on a lot of this finer salt to keep it from clumping together, and that stuff is extremely toxic when it's exposed to the sun. So you could be putting toxic salt in your bait tank right away. So just stick to pure salt. Diamond Crystal, solar salt made with evaporation is what I use. It's the purest that I found. I mean, it's so pure, sometimes you might find a piece of coral or a stick in it. Fine with me. It's pure. So myths about what salt does that are going around from other companies or people online that just don't understand what salt does. Salt does not control ammonia. Okay? In a bait tank, it could never control enough ammonia to matter. Salt does not make the scales harder on a fish. They're already hard. It doesn't make them harder. Here's a big one that I hear a lot reading online. Salt does not increase the oxygen level in your bait tank. And I admit this is a little confusing because when you add salt to fresh water, the bubble size gets smaller. So you would naturally think the smaller the bubble, the more bubbles, the more oxygen. Well, no. Salt water doesn't hold as much oxygen as fresh water. So the saltier the water, the less oxygen the water retains. So another myth. I think that pretty much sums up what salt does. I tried to simplify that the best I could. If you'd like to dig deeper into it, you can. There's plenty of videos online or reading material out there about how fish regulate osmotic pressure and the difference between saltwater fish and freshwater fish, and why we can keep saltwater fish in an open system, and why we need to keep freshwater forage fish in a closed system. So that's what salt does. So see ya.